Mr. Patrick+lacour.
Good evening. Thank you for letting us come tonight and ask questions. My first question goes to Mr. Marcotte. In the negotiations, this is in regards to the transmission donut, the so-called transmission donut. What discussions did you have with R.W. Beck about a Section 205 FERC filing?
Repeat that?
What discussions did you have with R.W. Beck about a potential Section 205 FERC filing?
Now, if you would do that in layman's language, I understand.
What is it?
Well, we talked about the transmission donut. Well, before I go and explain that, I'd like to know if they have had that discussion.
We've had numerous discussions, and I'd actually have to review my notes to tell you exactly what sections of every FERC regulation were discussed, Mr. LaCour.
Does anyone else from the administration want to speak to Section 205?
We're lost.
Okay, we talked about transmission.
Can you tell us what Section 205 is?
We talked about the transmission, the so-called transmission donut. The OATT is an open access transmission tariff. It's provided so that there is not monopoly power by someone who used to have monopoly power of those transmission lines. In 1992, Congress opened up the transmission lines to give cities like the city of Alexandria an opportunity not to get into a transmission donut like what's been asserted here by the administration. So, if cleco or Entergy, either acting separately or together, are telling you that you cannot get power in here, the very same power that they bring in here, then you can file a Section 205 with FERC and ask FERC to come in and declare them a monopoly and then force them to give you the access that you're supposed to have at the rates that they pay. So there are ways that you can get around transmission donuts, so-called transmission donuts. I said at the last meeting, I'm going to say it again. Cleco does not have enough generation to supply its own load, much less the city of Alexandria. Cleco has to import power from other places. That power comes on the same lines that the city of Alexandria could employ a third party to do it. I realize it's difficult, probably, to get that. It's hard, because it's going to require you to fight more. You may have to go to the FERC and ask the FERC to be on your side. But in 1 week, we've asked the public to look at this deal and give comments, and I appreciate that you have, but it's only been 1 week. We haven't had a very, what I would consider an appropriate time for the public to comment on this. And if I'm in here mentioning the Section 205 for the first time, and R.W. Beck, we've spent $1.3 million with R.W. Beck, and nobody from the administration can even speak to the potential Section 205 filing. I would argue that...
Okay, we're going to let him finish. I'm going to ask the mayor of the administration to come forward and address that issue as to whether it's been properly addressed. And I think I'm going to let you wrap up because I've been kind of generous with your 3 minutes.
When you ask me, I would rather have gone forward, because I think by talking about the 205, I gave them the answer to the 205. I would prefer just to move on and discuss some other issues like the $29 million. They've been talking about an upfront payment of $29 million.
Okay, you going to ask a question, or are you going to...
Well, okay, my question is that the Hibernia Bank, okay, they've now said that they will give you the letter of credit for 100 basis points, which shouldn't cost the city any money. But are they going to require, will there be any restricted cash? Is the city going to have to post, in other words, are you going to have assets tied to that letter of credit, or is the letter of credit going to be free so that you can't spend the money? Because I heard Mr. Johnson say that the council's free to spend that $29 million. But if you were to default on that letter of credit, if you've already spent the $29 million, Hibernia is going to ask you for some portion of that back, depending on when it is. So,
Mr. LaCour, I think the council understands how a letter of credit works. They know that the city would have to replenish any amount if we defaulted on the contract and Cleco tapped it, and I'd ask you not to insult their intelligence, please.
I don't, excuse me, did I insult anyone here on the council's intelligence?
Yes. No, I didn't. I wasn't.
Let me do this. We have an opportunity for. We have an opportunity. I want to hear everyone, and time permits, we're going to give an opportunity. You have any other burning question as we go to this?
Well, just the $29 million. That was not discussed in the PowerPoint presentation last week. That letter of credit was not discussed. All of it was discussed was an upfront $29 million payment. If you're a regular Alexandria citizen, you would have thought that we were going to get $29 million free and clear. But that's not really the case. We have to turn around and give $29 million. The first year, we have to give $29 million back to cleco. The second year, that letter of credit goes down to $28 million.
Let's have an answer.
Thank you, Mr. LaCour.
Mayor, do you mind, just